and welcome to Being Catholic. I'm Carol Kelso and I'm glad you have joined us. Well, today I am joined by a wonderful man of God. I'm joined by David Parks. Now, you may know him from Medjugorje because he spent the last number of years out there with a number of pilgrims, with millions of pilgrims, I should say. So, David, you're very welcome. Welcome to Being Catholic. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Carol. Great joy.
Well, look, we're here today to share about your new album, which is called Remember Me. But before we get to that, perhaps you can share, for those who maybe don't know you, a bit about your life. And I know we know you've had a healing that happened many years ago in Medjugorje. And there may be some people who don't know your story. So perhaps you can start there.
Well, in a former life, Carol, I was a professional soccer player. I played League of Ireland soccer from the age of 17. Loved football, was my first love. Had the great privilege of representing Ireland, but playing against Pelé, George Best, all the great names. I had the privilege of kicking them around the football pitch. And then at the height of my football career, I was 27, I got struck down with an illness called Crohn's disease. Plagued my life for 14 years. In that period of 14 years, I had 10 major surgeries. And the last surgery was on the 7th of January, 1989. And the doctors gave me roughly weeks to live. They said there was nothing more I could do. Now, God and I hadn't spoken for about 9 years. Reason being, my eldest boy, middle child, Ken, was born with cystic fibrosis. I got very angry, as you do when something goes wrong. It's always God's fault. So I decided God wouldn't be part of my life. And in the immortal words of that great song by Frank Sinatra, I decided to live my life my way, which unfortunately was the slippery slope to disaster.
So before your professional life, did you have a relationship with God as a child?
Yeah, I mean, we were a Catholic family. We went to Mass every Sunday and host feast days and so forth. So God was always around. And even in my early married life, he was always present. Right. But just, when Ken was born in 1975, I couldn't take that a child of mine had an incurable illness. I felt, here was I, a professional soccer player, athlete, not an ounce of superfluous weight in my body. And here am I with a child that is, as I remember saying at one stage, imperfect. God had given me a reject. So I really found that. It took me years upon years to try and come to terms. And, poor me. Oh, my God, what luck and rap. Yeah. And I used to say that to people. I used to wait for conversation to stop. And I'd say, oh, well, I suppose you heard about what I've been given, the cross I've been given. Very selfish. Not worrying about poor Anne, who had this child 24/7. At least I could escape to work at some stage or go off playing football. So God was. But I just got really angry with God. And as days passed by, weeks went past, and years, I just didn't bother with Mass.
And I guess when you then heard that you just had a very short time to live, well, you must have felt like giving up completely.
Well, I remember the first day, the day after the last surgery, the surgeon came in, and I remember he stood at the end of the bed, and it was very callous. There was no niceties. Well, of course, I suppose there's no nice way of telling you you're dying. But he stood at the end of the bed and said, David, there's nothing more I can do for you. In my opinion, you have weeks to live, And I remember starting to cry. And I cried the entire day, all day long. I remember as if it was yesterday. But then the following morning, I didn't sleep through the night, but I sort of had an epiphany moment when I said, listen, you have to worry about the family. Because Anne had never worked since Ken was born. He needed all this attention. So I was the only breadwinner in the house. So I decided, look, I need to think about the wife and the kids and not be selfish. So I had the band in the Burlington. At this stage now, I was a professional musician. When I gave up the football in 1977, I got involved in the music industry. And so I had the band in the Burlington Hotel in Dublin. They knew financially we were in difficulties because, as you know, Carol, if you don't work, you don't earn any money. Okay. So if I wasn't singing, there was no money coming into the household. So the guys in the band realized, listen, this guy is bust. So they ran a concert in the Green Isle Hotel in Dublin, and all the great cabaret artists of the time all gave their services free on the night, so that all the money that came in from the sale of admission tickets would be given to Anne and I.
Right.
And there was two people who arrived. One guy was a guy called Harry Dixon, and he was there with his business partner called Heather Parsons. And they came along because Heather's husband was a trumpet player who knew my father, who was a trumpet player and band leader. So that's how they ended up being there. So at the end of the evening, Harry felt inspired to come up and offer me and Anne tickets to Medjugorje, which I fought against because God and I, no interest.
And did you
God
know
is
about
not part.
Medjugorje at the time?
I did, Carol, because here's another strange thing. Medjugorje has been in my life in the background. Anne and I were married in 1972. We were to go to Ibiza on our honeymoon. But 2 weeks before we were getting married, I was in town and I met four of the guys who I played football with. And we were chatting, said, "Oh, Parksy, you have to come with us. We're going to Ibiza for a lad's holiday." And I said, "When are you going?" They said, "Oh, the 17th of June. That's the day we were getting married." So I went back up to Anne's house and I said, "Anne, there might be a bit of a problem." She thought I was getting cold feet when I said there might be a bit of a problem. And then I explained to her. So she said, "Well, I'm not going. I'm not going to Ibiza because I'm not going to be a widow to footballers at the first week of my marriage." So we we contacted the travel agent on the Monday, and they said, "Listen, do you want your money back?" We said, "No, we don't want it, but can you recommend anywhere else?" So they recommended us to go to Savtat, which is in Croatia, which is just 4 kilometers from the airport in Dubrovnik. So we had a great time anyway. But when Harry was offering me this free pilgrimage, I could, "No, Harry, not interested. God isn't part of my life." And every reason I had as to not go, he'd come back with something else. And then I just said to him, "Look, Harry, Ken is on the transplant list for lung transplant. If that comes in, I would be gone. So I'm not interested at all." And then he said, "You know what, David?" He said, "On the way back from Medjugorje, we'll stop at a little place you've never heard of called Savtat."
Right.
And he said, "We'd like your wife and your Anne to come." And so, but in the interim period, anything that happened in the former Yugoslavia, Anne would always, if it was in the newspaper, say, "Oh, such and such, there was a bomb here," or whatever. And I do remember saying, "Oh, our Blessed Mother's supposed to be appearing in Medjugorje," and that was as far as it went. So after all of this, once you said dinner in Savtat, that was it.
You were gone.
Our lady is sneaky, Carol. She is so sneaky. She knew what button to press. She knew, I get him there for a meal, but Jesus and my son will take care of him. And that's exactly what happened.
So what was your first impression of Medjugorje when you got there?
Well, the first impression on the bus was, I'm with a group of religious maniacs because they were praying the rosary and hallelujah. And I'm there, having told Anne, I don't want to know anything about religion, But when we arrived, I mean, it was ramshackle. Once you went over the little bridge there, there was partially built houses here and one road that turned up to the right and this twin-spired church. I wanted to leave. What was I going to do in a week, Carol? A week.
Man of world, professional singer, footballer.
Professional singer.
What am I doing here? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So went up, had a look at the church. I was in awful pain, the pain after the surgery, as I said, and I was like death warmed up. Went up to the church. It was cold. It was miserable. Stood outside and listened to this language of something going on you knew nothing about. And I turned to Anne and I said to her, "Anne, is this it? Is this it? What am I going to do for a week here? Listen, I'm going back to the house. We're sleeping and we're going back to Dubrovnik." That was. So went back to the house, couldn't sleep, woke up the following morning and couldn't sleep either. She said to me, the reason she couldn't sleep was because I wanted to go home. So was she going to tell Harry Dixon and company when we went home that David left immediately?
Yes.
But for every reason that I wanted to go home, she had every reason as to why we should stay.
Yeah.
But we were blessed because we had a wonderful priest, Father Peter Mary Rookie.
Yes.
from Chicago who had great intercessory power of prayer for healing. An amazing person, an amazing man. And in the graveyard, of all places, through the intercession of Father Rookie and the anointing with holy oil and the laying of hands, I had an instant physical healing.
My goodness.
Instant.
And did you feel it, David, this physical feeling? Did you feel something?
Yeah, well, I didn't know what it was, Carol. You know, see, I'd never been to a healing service before. And Father Peter's services are the laying of hands, you know, so he'd lay the hands and he'd anoint with oil and he'd close the eyes and he'd take off in prayer. And then these people would fall to the ground, you know. And of course, I'm standing there wide-eyed. What's going on here? Religious lunatics I'm with here. So yeah, I mean, I made a show of everybody, but then Anne kept persuading me to have a blessing, and eventually I did have a blessing. 3 Irish priests working with Father Rookie each individually blessed me. Nothing happened. Father Rookie came along, and we'd had a little bit of a difficulty at the airport because when I met him and when I shook hands, this aura of love came at me like I'd never felt before. And like, here's this guy who represented everything that I was against. And so I was a little bit nasty to him, really, unfortunately I was. But he laughed it all off. But in the graveyard, when he stood in front of me, he said to me, David, there's something you want to tell me. And I said, Father, I don't wish to speak with you. I'm in extreme pain, and the doctors say I have 2 weeks to live. So he put his hand in his pocket, and he had a lovely black crucifix. Have you ever met him, Carol?
No, I never met him. But
he had a black crucifix, and in it were 7 relics of the 7 founders of the Servite orders, servants of Mary. And so he put the crucifix in my hand, and then he dipped his thumb in the oil, and he put the sign of the cross on my forehead, and then he started to pray. And then I remember the next thing was he was taking the crucifix out of my hand, and then the next thing was I was lying on the ground.
Oh my God.
Looking up into the face of Jodie Cassidy, would you believe? And when I got up off the ground, I felt stupid. You know, how did I get down here? You know, I'm looking around, looking for Anne for some sort of consolation of as how I ended up there.
Yes.
And when I got up, and I said to Donny, who hit me? He said, Parks. He said, the Spirit is with you very strongly. Yes. You've been out for 20 minutes.
You were out for 20 minutes?
I was resting in the Spirit for 20 minutes.
For those who are not familiar with slaying of spirit, and this happens in Medjugorje quite a lot because I've experienced it too, it's where people are blessed or laid hands on and you fall straight to the ground, and some people just go on what would seem to be unconscious. And some people I found it very intimidating, very frightening, but it actually is a beautiful thing to happen to someone.
Amazing. It was probably I remember at the time trying to get up, you know. It was like somebody just took their finger and put no pressure at all, just put it against your skin. That was enough to keep me there. But I felt my whole metabolism had slowed down. My breathing was really, really slow. And I was aware of what was going on. I could hear all the prayers and so forth, but I just didn't want to get up. But when I did get up, there was a burning sensation from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. Yeah.
Well, you know, David, we were in, it was many years ago, maybe about 12, 13 years ago. Myself and my friends who I used to go to Medjugorje, who actually introduced me to yourself, we were at one of your shows one time.
The concert.
Singing in Medjugorje. And each one of us were asked to hold hands. You asked us to hold hands.
Oh, for the Our Father. The Our Father.
And you were singing, right? And Michael, the guy who comes normally with us to Medjugorje, he's a man of very, very few words. He's an accountant by trade, and a typical accountant, doesn't say much. But when the blessing came, his whole body was pinned to the chair because he felt an electricity go through his body at one of your shows. So people who have experienced this type of thing, it's very real.
It is, but some people are under the impression that if you fall down, you're healed. That's not the truth. No. I mean, people are very susceptible to the Spirit, and it's a great grace to be given. And some people, it does have no effect on it all. You know, that's one of the things I said when I saw all these people going down on the ground, that it was a mass hysteria. You know, that they felt, well, if I'm not going to get it, I'm going to let on I got it. You know, because everybody was falling down. But it's an amazing grace. It really is an amazing grace.
So that was in 1993.
That was in 89.
89.
1989,
so,
yeah.
1989. So moving forward, that radically changed your life. What happened from that moment?
I had a whole new outlook on life. The Church of St. James became like a beacon, or magnet. So I wanted to be there every day. I mean, we went to 3 masses, Croatian mass, German mass, English mass, and even Italian mass some days, you know. So I always wanted to be there. And sometimes we only sat outside. There were, in those days, the early days, there was just benches that were nailed to the ground, and you just sat there, you know. So I would hear people talking, you know, and peace always seemed to be flying around, and people might be the only word I'd hear as they went past me, peace and peace. And some people were saying that they experienced the peace up on the hill of apparitions. Yeah. So that's where really the greatest gift of my life came. I had the most incredible spiritual healing.
Right.
I had left Anne twice. It's another story, but I was very bold. Left her twice, and Anne had the great ability to forgive, so she invited me back home. And so my life changed from that moment on. I came home a totally different person, went back to Mass, and tried to be a better person, really and truly tried to be a better person after that. And then in 1993, I went back working with the Burlington, with the band, but in 1993, September, I just lost the buzz. That's the thing you should say, you know, the buzz. Mm-hmm. And I'd always said to the guys, I had the band for 14 years. And I remember saying to the lads, look, when I lose the buzz, we're out of here, you know. So it was difficult because they were all professional musicians. So when we decided to stop, it meant we were all out of work as such.
Oh, gosh.
So in 1993, then I decided that, you know, I wanted to do something for the Lord in thanksgiving for what the great gifts that he gave me in Medjugorje. So I came back from Medjugorje, tried to get Let Me Live, which was a beautiful pro-life song that I was given in 1977 by a husband and wife in Navan, County Meath, and eventually got to a wonderful family in Boston, Martin and Mary Henry, who listened to the song, and they agreed to fund the album. And that's where my whole life, and every reason that they had told me in Ireland about Let Me Live, it will ruin your career. That's the last song you'd be trying to sing if you're going to launch your career. But it was through Let Me Live that every invitation that I got to travel around the world was because of that. So
your work with Marian Pilgrimages, how did that happen?
Well, I used to bring groups after the healing. You know, I used to go back out to Medjugorje. Medjugorje Pilgrimages, as that was Harry Dixon, they went bang when the recession started. And then this other guy, Tom Glynn, Lord rest him, who was working for a holiday company, used to love Croatia, would always go himself, the wife and the 4 boys, drive all over Croatia. So he was in Mostar one day and he's coming down the hill and he sees an airport, finds out what it's all about, realizes it's very close to Medjugorje. So he's just set up the company called Marian Pilgrimages. So I used to come out with the group, and then there had been a difficulty in Medjugorje that I knew about. And we used to always meet. We talk about the internet. We'd always meet every January because at that time he was setting up the internet, which none of us knew anything about. And he wanted to know, would I promote Marian Pilgrimages in America as I went on tour? But nothing ever happened. Nothing. 2001, I'm leaving on the 7th of January to go to America. I get a phone call 2 days before. David, how are you? When are you off to America? I'm off. So, can I meet you before you go? Met him, talked for rubbish for 20 minutes, you know, football, because he was a few years older, but played for Shamrock Rovers when I was just joining Shamrock Rovers. And then he said to me, I had trouble in Medjugorje. I said, I do. This is what I'd like you to do. And I said, ooh, how do you mean this is what you want me to do? He said, I'd like you to. But Tom, I said, I have a career in America. I said, I'm booked up for the next 2.5 years. But we could work around that. So again, the same. Anytime I tried to defend my position, the Lord always gets the upper hand. I kept saying, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And he said, look, David, we'll cross that bridge. I told him about Ken. Ken was always the one that was going to blow everybody out of the water.
Yes.
Ken is on the transplant list, and if anything happened, I'm gone. Could be 6 months, who knows? He said, we'll cross it. So that's how I went to work for Marion Pilgrimages.
Getting on to this latest album, which is called Remember Me. Beautiful, very different. I found this album a wee bit different from your previous work. I found it a little bit more contemporary. It's more Christian than, I just say, more Catholic. It's more diverse.
It is,
Christian content. It's beautifully put together. You've obviously used an orchestra this time. Perhaps you can share a little bit about that.
It was 20 years since I'd recorded my last album, which was called In His Time. And I bought a small little studio, thing called Pro Tools, because I said I'll have plenty of time out in Medjugorje. I can get a few musicians, we'll do an album. And it never usually, like everything else, you're so busy, it never came about. But it was 30 years since I had my healing in Medjugorje. It was 20 years since I had my last album. And they built a beautiful recording studio attached to Radio Mir in Medjugorje. At one point, 7 years ago, Radio Mir was the most up-to-date radio station in the world. Okay. Everything was digital. It had everything. Yes. And they used to always go, maybe you'll do an album, and maybe you'll do an album. Yes, and I said, of course, me being the pauper. And then I went to Australia after 20 years. And this wonderful guy, John Canavan, who brings me out, halfway through the tour, he said, Paxi, I want you to come out next year. And I said, God, John, I'd love it. He said, but Paxi, it'll be on one condition. And I said, what's that, John? He said, you have to do a new album. I said, John, I have no money. He said, look, David, he said, it's very embarrassing. He said, standing behind this table, he said, people are in there, listening to you singing. And then they come out and there's 7 albums with a young fella on the cover and an old fella singing from the altar. So I said to him, John, look, there's no money. He said, listen, David, people will help you if you ask. So I forgot all about it. And I'm in Medjugorje 2 years ago. Ken was extremely ill. There was a lot on my mind. Yes. And I came home urgently, and I had a meeting with Niall, who is now the owner of the company. And he was talking, but he said to me, where are you? And I said, what do you mean, where am I? here? He said, no, he said, you're miles away. And I said, I was just thinking about what a guy in Australia said he wants me to do a new album. Mm-hmm. And he said, how much would it cost? So I told him what it was. He said, I'll give you half it. Wow. So then
God's providence in your life, David.
Yeah. Well, that's the first time really that, you see, I'll ask for something for everybody else, but I'll never ask for myself. So if you needed something, Carol, I'd be knocking on the doors. Yeah, we need money for whatever else it is. Yeah. But listen, I need money for me. But anyway, so I was saying this is probably going to be my last album, I was close to 70 years of age. And I said, wouldn't it be lovely if we could get Medjugorje involved in it? So the studio people made me a great deal to record there. We got all the musicians. We're all from around Medjugorje. We had to bring down a string section from Dubrovnik, and then we had another section from Mostar. So everything was done in Medjugorje, recorded, musicians, the whole lot.
The album, again, as I say, is quite eclectic. You cover a range of songs.
Yeah.
Really do. And, you've got Now Is the Time to Worship. You've got really contemporary tracks that people will be able to relate to and know. And obviously people can be able to get the album, obviously through Being Catholic Media. We'll stick it up on the website. So if people want to grab a copy, they can grab it there. So that's very exciting, David. So what are you doing now? Are you at home? Are you still doing music? Obviously with this whole Corona thing happening, obviously Medjugorje is probably just put aside for now. So what's the plans for yourself?
I've taken up a whole new profession of directing Zoom talks.
Right, yes, of course.
Marion Pilgrimages on a Monday night, we do a virtual prayer group meeting from Medjugorje. So we have 5 guides spaced out there, and they all become camera people. They all become directors, producers.
Yes.
Then we would have a spiritual director from one of our priests from all over Ireland. We also had one from the UK. Maybe we'll get one from Scotland in the near future.
What we're going to do is, Dave, we're going to actually put on our website and on our Facebook page, we're going to put a link to this.
Yeah, we can provide you with the link. Yeah,
and people can participate if they want to. Obviously, Catholics now are really beginning to feel, maybe that a wee bit distant from God, or there may be some Catholics who may be listening who says, no, healing is not for me. This whole God thing is not for me. What would you say to those people who may be listening to this interview or watching?
What I would say to them, Carol, is we're in this mess because there's no God. There's no order in the world.
Yes.
They've taken him out of everywhere. Schools, churches, places of work. Even, it's... I remember one priest at a Marian conference in America saying, if we had more people going to confession, we wouldn't need all these psychotherapists. And he's right. We really need God in our lives because at the moment, there's no hope. Mm. There's no hope in the world at the moment. And I'm always reminded of the talk that Archbishop Hoser, who is the visitor in residence in Medjugorje, I always remember him saying, that what he noticed when he came to Medjugorje, that Medjugorje is hope for the world. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's a light burning in Medjugorje that is for the world. Uh-huh. So, I mean, it is difficult. I just think back in my own situation, if I didn't have God in my life, there's nothing to live for. Yeah. There's nothing to live for, There's no joy.
No joy.
Everybody's fighting.
Yeah.
It's total chaos. Yeah. You can see that there's no joy in people's lives. There's no smiling in people's lives at all. It's all negativity. All negativity. So God is the person who will give us the peace. That's the most important thing in life, is peace.
Yes.
Peace.
And so thank you. We'll finish here, David. Thank you for talking to us. And we're going to be, in the future, you're going to be joining us on further days. So I look forward to that. But in the meantime, it's great talking to you. And I look forward to speaking to you in the future and seeing what the Lord is going to do with both of our lives. And look, at the very best. Thank you so much, and God bless. And we'll speak to you real soon.
God bless you, Carol. Keep up your great work.
Thank you.
God bless. Bye-bye.